What if you were thrown by a 1-kilometer catapult? Sounds like the ultimate amusement park ride until you realize this isn't about fun. It's about physics. Imagine, you're strapped into the world's biggest slingshot. A catapult so massive, its arm stretches the length of 10 football fields. You're pulled back, heart pounding, the tension building. And then snap. You're hurled forward at unimaginable speed. But what would actually happen to you? Would you soar majestically like Superman? Or would you be reduced to, well, a squishy physics lesson? Welcome to iFology. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps us create even more mind-bending content like this. Now let's see what would really happen if you got launched by a 1-kilometer catapult. First, the basics. Catapults are simple machines. They store potential energy, usually in twisted rope, tension, or counterweights, and then release it to fling objects through the air. Ancient armies used them to hurl rocks and fireballs. But a 1-kilometer catapult? That's a monstrosity beyond imagination. Let's assume it's built with futuristic materials strong enough to withstand the forces. If it's 1 kilometer long, the release speed could easily reach thousands of kilometers per hour. To put that into perspective, that is faster than a jet fighter and maybe even close to orbital velocity, the speed you need to escape Earth's atmosphere. Sounds exciting, right? Not so fast. Your body wouldn't survive the launch. The problem is G-forces. When you accelerate too quickly, your body feels heavier. Fighter pilots train to handle about 9 gigaseconds, 9 times Earth's gravity. Beyond that, blood rushes away from the brain, you black out, and your organs are under crushing stress. Now imagine being yanked from 0 to several thousand kilometers per hour in just a second. That's thousands of Gs. Your skeleton would snap instantly. Your organs liquefied. You wouldn't even make it past the launch pad. But let's play along. Let's say somehow, with sci-fi technology, you're in a special protective capsule that absorbs the shock. Now you're flying through the air. What's next? Well, air resistance becomes your next nightmare. At such high speeds, the air around you compresses, heats up, and could ignite. It's the same effect spacecraft face when re-entering Earth's atmosphere. Except, instead of high-tech heat shields, you're just a human in a box. Without protection, you'd burn up within seconds. But suppose again, you survive with advanced shielding. Where do you land? That depends on your angle. Too steep, and you smash into the ground like a meteor. Too shallow, and you might skim through the atmosphere, bouncing like a stone across water. Either way, landing safely would be, let's just say, unlikely. Okay, so far we've established that being launched from a 1-kilometer catapult would likely turn you into a puddle of biology. But let's stretch the imagination a little more. What if this wasn't about hurling you, but about hurling objects? Now it gets interesting. A giant catapult like this could, in theory, work like a mass driver, a concept NASA has actually studied. Instead of using rockets to launch cargo into orbit, you use massive machines to fling it into space. The advantage? No need for tons of fuel, just raw acceleration. But the challenge is still the same, acceleration. If you throw something too fast, too suddenly, it gets destroyed. That is why even futuristic designs use magnetic rails or electromagnetic launchers to spread out the acceleration over many kilometers. A catapult, even a 1-kilometer one, is way too short. It's like trying to get on the highway by flooring the gas pedal instantly. The car, or in this case, your body, can't handle it. Still, let's imagine it's engineered perfectly. You survive the launch, strapped into a sci-fi capsule. You're now sailing through the skies at Mach 20 to 20 times the speed of sound. Within seconds, you're punching through the stratosphere, leaving behind a glowing trail of plasma. What happens if you break free of the atmosphere? Congratulations, you've essentially been catapulted into space. You'd be on a suborbital trajectory, like astronauts in the early days of spaceflight. You'd float for a while, experiencing zero gravity before falling back down to Earth in a fiery re-entry. Unless, of course, the catapult is aimed just right and you hit escape velocity, about 40,000 kilometers per hour. In that case, you'd leave Earth's gravity entirely and drift into the void. Sounds exciting, until you remember you still have to land. And unless your capsule comes with thrusters and parachutes, you'd crash spectacularly. But what if, instead of humans, This giant catapult was used for waste disposal. Imagine flinging trash, or even nuclear waste, straight into the sun. Problem solved, right? Wrong. The precision required to aim something into the sun is enormous. And if you miss, you've just created radioactive space junk orbiting forever. Not a great look. So could there be any practical use for a 1-kilometer catapult? Maybe. Scientists have considered smaller-scale versions for launching supplies to orbit, minerals from the moon, or even probes to other planets. In fact, a real company called SpinLaunch is testing a giant rotating launcher to hurl satellites into space without rockets. Their prototype is only 50 meters. Back to you though. If a person were strapped to such a catapult, even with all the protections, survival would be a lottery. You'd face G-forces that could tear your body apart, atmospheric heating that could burn you alive, and a landing that would be more destructive than the launch itself. So the next time someone asks if you'd ride a giant 1-kilometer catapult, the answer is simple: only if you don't like living. But as an experiment of imagination, it teaches us about physics, the limits of technology, and maybe even the future of launching things into space. Outro. So what do you think? Would you dare to ride the world's biggest catapult, even with the risks? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Ufology for more insane science scenarios. Because in the end, the wildest what-ifs always teach us the most.